Hi, I'm Andrea Cinque. Welcome to Eye on San Francisco. I'm here with Jon Barron, San Francisco and the nation's health renaissance man. Welcome, Jon.
Thank you very much.
That's a pretty powerful title, Health Renaissance Man. What exactly earned you the title of Health Renaissance Man?
Actually, that came in a radio interview that I did. The hostess announced me that way. And I think it's primarily because my background is very broad in terms of knowledge of American Indian herbal medicine, Ayurvedic herbal medicine, Chinese, sort of the whole gamut. I know a lot of it.
You've been around the block.
Been around the block. I've been doing it for 40 years. I'm older than I look. So I'm 58.
You look wonderful, and you must be taking all those good nutritional supplements.
Well, actually, yes.
You're a walking advertisement.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's what I do. It's interesting. I mean, there are many people who are in health and nutrition and don't actually show any of the benefits of it. I think it's important if you actually say that you're able to help people, that you're able to demonstrate it. Yeah.
Right. You walk the walk.
You walk the walk.
You don't just talk the talk.
Right.
Tell me a bit about your book. I know that you're an author, and you have written a book called on healthcare.
Called Lessons from the Miracle Doctors. Have a copy here. It's been available. It's on Amazon.com, and I certainly have no problem if anyone wants to buy it, but it's also available for free. You can download it electronically from the Baseline of Health Foundation. That's jonbarron.org, JONBARRON.org. And the copy has been downloaded all over the world. A couple of years ago, one of my favorite stories, we actually had 50 people in a 2-week period from Iran download the book.
Go figure.
Go figure. Virtually every country in the world. So it's been read everywhere. It basically is it's a guide. It's not just information, but it's designed to teach people how to take care of themselves, how to take their health back.
Well, now that's interesting because that's the question I have for you on this show today.
Okay.
And that is, after hearing President Bush's State of the Union address and how he's going to change the U.S. healthcare system, it makes me think, well, that's terrific. The government wants to change the healthcare system when the real issue is educating Americans about keeping healthy, preventing disease, which would fix the healthcare program.
Absolutely. That's perfectly stated, Andrea. The problem is, and I'm not going to get political here, but if you understand that the approaches the government takes, they don't deal with the real issue. The previous administration, the Clinton administration, wanted to mandate employers to take on the burden and to create caps so that spending could only go so far. But we know now, over the last 7 years, that was an impossibility. Employers can't afford the increases in costs from healthcare. They're abandoning healthcare programs for their workers. Workers who depended on it are being dropped. New companies aren't doing it. That's not an option. The Bush administration and what George Bush talked about are programs that would put more market incentives in. Some of them good ideas, like pay for performance, where basically doctors who did better, provided better quality care, would make more money. Those who didn't in hospitals that didn't would get less. But other things are unworkable, things like healthcare accounts that individuals would have and that basically they could draw from for their healthcare. The problem is there are millions of Americans who don't make enough money to put anything in that program, and then others, even if they put it in, they have one illness, it's drained, they don't have any more. We currently in the United States, and I think it's worth talking about the numbers, the crisis that they need to address. When I first started tracking the numbers 7 years ago, the figures were, depends on whose numbers you used, anywhere from $1 trillion to $1.4 trillion was spent on healthcare in the United States every year. The number is so huge, to give you some perspective, that's bigger than the gross national product of all but 6 countries in the entire world. It's that much money that we spend on healthcare in the U.S. and still leave 46 million people unprotected. Today, that figure is about $1.9 million, over half of it paid by government, which means we pay it in taxes.
Right.
Health insurance costs up over 60% in the last 7 years. The projection is in the next 12 years it will double again. It's an untenable situation, and everyone knows it, which is why they want to fix it. But as you mentioned, dealing with incentives, dealing with markets doesn't deal with the core issue. It's like putting your finger in the dike. And the problem is that self-inflicted disease that we're bringing on ourselves by what we eat, by our environments, the health choices we make, In fact, it's been said that we dig our graves one forkful at a time.
Oh, it's so true.
It's so true.
And to that point, here's some statistics that you shared with me prior to the show.
Right.
Diabetes is epidemic. Well, we all know that. According to the latest government projections, 1/3 of all children born in the U.S. today will be diabetic. 50% if you're Black or Hispanic. 95% of cases is a direct result of dietary choices.
Absolutely. Now, let me give you some numbers, dollar figures to go with it, which will give you an example of why none of the fixes that are being talked about can address the issue. Back in '97, we were spending about $44 billion in taking care of the effects of diabetes. Diabetes affects everything from circulation, people losing eyesight, losing limbs. 44 billion. By the time it was 2002, that number was 132 billion. It's doubled again today. 132 billion. It's now doubled that again. It's expected to double again as that generation you mentioned comes into play. So there's nothing you can do legislatively when the cost of disease that we're inflicting on ourselves is growing exponentially. If people don't start taking charge of their own health, no health plan in the world will cover them. And we've seen it around the world. The Canadian system that they're so very fond of is breaking down. England and their national healthcare system has spent billions of dollars trying to improve it, and you keep reading that no one's seeing any change. That unless people can start getting rid of those self-inflicted diseases that are expanding costs so exponentially, nothing will work.
So why doesn't, our federal government get this concept? Why do you get it and they don't?
There are a couple of reasons. One is that most people don't want to take responsibility for their health. We're sort of used to doing whatever we want and going to doctors to fix it. We like easy choices, and that just can't continue. People are going to need to take responsibility for their own health. They're going to need to take charge of it, become aware of legislation. Options are being taken away. Now it gets into the sort of the seamier side where money starts to play in. A lot of the political bills or legislation is based on, and this is non-party issue, but it's based on pork. I mean, we all have heard of that bridge to nowhere in Alaska for $250 million. Basically, that our representatives, their job is to get reelected. That's actually their full-time job.
Yes, it is.
So they look to find ways to bring money in to their constituents to create programs that fund things that don't actually provide solutions. There's no money, if you will, in cutting the actual cost. There's money in distributing money to people for hunting for a magic bullet. So the incentives are not there in government, and people have to sort of change their outlook. We've even changed the way we think of doctors. In the old days in China, they had a system. You paid your doctor as long as you were well. The moment you got sick, he didn't get paid because he had failed in his job. An interesting paradigm shift, isn't it?
Fabulous.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Yeah. So there are different mindsets of
So
people.
they're motivated to stay well.
Right, and the doctor's motivated to keep you well rather than to use expensive treatments.
Right. Wonderful. I have to tell you. Now, here's another one, another statistic that I find fascinating, because everyone watching this show has someone they know who has cancer. Mm-hmm. Everybody. It's insidious. Cancer rates are up 1,700% in the last 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we know now that a lot is dietary. We know that a lot is environment. A lot is genetic, a combination of all three. Mm-hmm. And also, people are not practicing preventive medicine. And that means that they're not taking the dietary supplements that they should. They're not getting enough exercise. What else?
Well, there are several things. You need to understand something about cancer. That 1,700% incorporates a lot of things. One is there are more people than we had 100 years ago. There were about 45 million people 100 years ago. We've got about 270 million now. So you're going to have an increase anyway. People are not necessarily living longer, and that's where it's talking about. There's a bit of statistical playing. One of my favorite quotes when you talk health and nutrition is a quote that Benjamin Disraeli had. There are three kinds of lies in the world: lies, damn lies, and statistics. So there are games people play with them.
That's right.
But the fact is, of that 1,700%, a certain amount is legitimate. But the rest of it is that we really have increased the amount of cancer that we have. Colon rectal cancer, 100 years ago, almost unknown. Today, the single largest killer in men and women. So and even as they make progress, it's actually fascinating to me. You'll find that the incidence of cancers such as prostate cancer and breast cancer have gone up for years. They now, over the last couple of years, have had a small downturn, And they call that a success, even though they started the war on cancer down here, and it's gone up to here, it's gone here. They're now winning the war on cancer. But for every little gain they make, there's a new cancer, like pancreatic cancer or lymphatic cancer, that is suddenly exploding, and we're losing ground. Cancer used to be the number 2. It's now moving in and will soon be the number 1 cause of death in the United States. By the way, cancer is fundamentally a disease of the immune system. Let me clarify that very briefly. Every day, as part of the normal metabolic process, you produce cancerous cells in your body, anywhere from a few hundred to as many as 10,000. If your immune system is functioning properly, it identifies each and every one of those cells and eliminates them. The problems are one, is if you produce more of those aberrant cells than your body can handle, or 2, if you compromise your immune system so it can't handle that amount. And in most cases, it's both together. How do you compromise your immune system? Cigarette smoking, sugar. There's enough sugar in a single can of soda to depress parts of your immune system by 50% or more for 6 hours or longer. How many people do you know who drink soda all day long?
All day long.
All day long.
All day long.
So you're functioning on a compromised immune system. It's not the only thing. Genetics does play a factor. But when you have an increase of 1,700%, let's say it's 1,000%, that's really increased if you move age outside and so on. So 1,000% increase, genetics doesn't change in 100 years. That's diet and environment. And in fact, you could literally reduce the incidence of cancer, the mortality rates of cancer by 90% if you took people back, if you will, to the diet that they had 100 years ago. Now,
well, there was no refined sugar then.
No refined sugar. Cancer feeds on sugar. Mm-hmm. People ate diets that were more balanced. A line that I like to use is you cannot build the same body on pepperoni, pizza, beer, and Twinkies that you can on real food. You can't do that. Mm-hmm. And the problem is people are trying to do that. They're eating food that has no nutritional value, food that's actually toxic. They're exposed to 100,000 chemicals that didn't exist 100 years ago.
We're going to hold that thought, and when we come back after this commercial break, we're going to talk about how we can take control of our health life.
Wonderful.
From the Renaissance man himself, Jon Barron. We'll be right back after this commercial break.